I came back home and found my bags outside. The note on top made my hands tremble. If you want to stay, the basement's available. Lydia. Her handwriting was as sharp as her voice. I stood on the sidewalk with the taxi still humming behind me, staring at the house Tom and I built 31 years ago. We mixed the concrete ourselves. We planted that maple by the porch when Aaron was 6. Now my suitcases sat beneath it like leftovers from another life. If you want to stay, the basement's available. The driver cleared his throat. Ma'am, should I bring these in? I shook my head. No. Just leave them there. I tried my key. It didn't turn. They had changed the locks. Lydia loved her new systems. New passwords, new alarms, new ways of keeping control. I folded the note carefully, as if it were something fragile, and slipped it into my purse. Through the front window I could see the hallway where Tom's mirror used to hang, now covered with brown paper. A fresh coat of paint, pale and expensive. I did not knock. I sat on the porch step and called the bank before the taxi left. First Horizon Bank, this is Cheryl, the woman said. This is Evelyn Brooks. I just want to confirm the last mortgage payment. Yes, ma'am, she said after a moment. We received your automatic transfer last Friday. $1,544. I closed my eyes. I had still been paying for a house that was no longer mine. Thank you, I said and hung up. It was Aaron's idea after Tom died. He said putting the house in his name would make taxes easier. That was how he said it, soft, practical, harmless. And I believed him. I always did. Then the comments started. Mom, you should travel more. Mom, you don't really need that big room. Furniture began disappearing one piece at a time. Lydia said it was for renovation. I told myself it was temporary. Now I was sitting outside my own house, locked out, with my name gone from the deed and my bank account still paying their bills. If you want to stay, the basement's available. I watched the sunlight slide along the porch rail Tom built with his own hands. I thought about the dehumidifier down there. How it groaned through the night, pulling water from the air. Lydia's idea of comfort. 5. I called my oldest friend, Nora. Nora, I said, my things are outside. They left a note about the basement. She was silent for a moment, then said quietly, Come here, Evelyn. I'll make up the guest room. But promise me one thing. What's that? Stop apologizing for existing. Something inside me settled. My money is off the table, I said. Good, she answered. Keep it that way. That night at Nora's, I sat on the couch with a cup of tea and stared at my phone. I opened the banking app and stopped the automatic payments. The screen asked, Are you sure? Yes. I printed the confirmation and folded it beside Lydia's note. Then I turned off the light. For the first time in months I felt steady. They thought I would beg for space in the basement. They were wrong. I woke early at Nora's, before the house had begun to stir. The kettle clicked, the way Tom's used to, and the sound of it filled the silence that had followed me from Laurel Street. I kept seeing those bags on the porch, my life arranged like a shipment. Nora came in wearing her old flannel robe, hair pinned up with a pencil. You didn't sleep, she said. I did not, I answered. She poured coffee into 2 mugs. You can stay as long as you want. I know, I said, though the words felt temporary. Everything lately felt temporary, rooms, promises, even my own name. After Tom's funeral, Aaron had moved through the house like someone with a checklist. He was gentle at first. Too gentle. Mom, you shouldn't have to deal with paperwork now, he'd said, setting a neat folder on the kitchen table. If we shift the title to my name, it'll make things simpler. Less stress for you. He'd smiled that calm, reasonable smile I had learned not to argue with since he was 10. I signed where he pointed, the way I always had with Tom's forms, trusting that family meant safety. But simplicity came with conditions. Mom, you should think about decluttering, Lydia said that winter. Less stuff to dust. She began with the big armchair Tom used to read in, then the oak desk, then my sewing machine. For renovation, she said each time, voice bright, polite, final. When the living room felt bare enough to echo, Lydia started on the upstairs. You'll have more peace if you move down here for now, she said, gesturing to the guest room off the kitchen. You don't need to climb those stairs every day. I had nodded, though my knees still worked fine. I told myself it was temporary, The way you tell yourself a thunderstorm will pass before the picnic. That was a year ago. Now I sat in Nora's kitchen, the smell of toast drifting in, trying to understand how every quiet suggestion had become an eviction notice. Later that morning my phone buzzed. A text from Aaron. "Mom, can we talk later? Don't worry about the house. Lydia's sorting things." I stared at the words. Sorting things. That was what she called it when she cleared my dresser drawers into boxes and labeled them miscellaneous. I put the phone face down. Nora looked up from her crossword. "You're frowning." "They're planning something," I said. "They've been planning for a while," she answered. That afternoon I went for a walk along the river. The air smelled like wet pine and metal from the bridge. I used to walk there with Tom after supper. We'd count the ducks and talk about Aaron's science projects. I remembered the day we built the house. Tom's shoulders sunburned, Aaron handing him nails, me keeping lemonade cold in a metal pitcher. It had all seemed permanent. By evening I found myself scrolling through Aaron's Facebook page. The newest post showed Lydia in front of my lilac bushes, smiling. The caption read, "Big changes coming, new chapter, new home." My stomach tightened. New home. I knew what that meant. I called Aaron. He answered on the second ring. "Mom, I was going to call you tomorrow. What does that post mean?" I asked. He sighed. "It means we're thinking about selling. The market's good right now. Moving to something more practical." "More practical than what?" "Than a house that's too much for us to maintain. You understand." "No," I said. "I do not." There was a pause long enough for me to hear Lydia's voice faintly in the background. "Mom," he said, his tone softening. "You gave us the house, remember? You said it yourself, it's ours now. Please don't make this harder." Harder. That was the word people used when they wanted to skip over guilt. "I paid the mortgage last week," I said. He hesitated. "That's just how it's set up. We can fix it later." "Fix it," I repeated. "Or stop it." He did not answer. When I hung up, my hands were steady for the first time in days. An hour later Lydia called. "Evelyn," she began, all sympathy and efficiency. "I know this is emotional, but we have to think about what's best for everyone. You'd be happier somewhere with company. Maybe an assisted living place? They're beautiful now, really modern." Her tone was the same one she used with telemarketers. "I am not moving into assisted living," I said. "You can't live with Nora forever," she said lightly. "And you don't want to hold Aaron back." Hold him back from what? The house his parents built? The equity he had already taken? I kept my voice calm. "I will decide where I live." Silence, then a quick exhale. "All right," she said and hung up. That week the whispers began. A neighbor called Nora. Someone from the church quilting group. She asked gently whether I was getting the care I needed. Another woman mentioned that Aaron had told her I was starting to forget things. Nora's eyes flashed when she told me. "They're spreading this to cover themselves," she said. "I know," I said. "But let them talk. Words are just wind. Paper is proof." That night I opened my folder again, but I didn't look at the bank pages. I just sat with them in my lap. The way someone holds a truth that has finally taken shape. Aaron had my house, my furniture, my savings wrapped into a mortgage I still paid. Lydia had her story about the confused old woman who couldn't manage anymore. What I had was clarity. Every phrase they used now echoed in my head like a refrain. "Mom, it'll make things easier. Mom, you don't really need that big room. If you want to stay, the basement's available." Each one had been a small cut. Together they had bled me dry. Before bed, Nora set a cup of tea on the nightstand. "You've always been gentle," she said. "That's not the same as weak." I nodded. It took me too long to see the difference. When she left the room, I whispered into the dark. Not as a threat but as a promise to myself. "My money is off the table." The words no longer sounded defensive. They sounded like a door closing softly, final, clean, necessary. Outside, the rain began, slow and steady against the window. I thought of the basement at Laurel Street, damp and cold, the hum of the dehumidifier pulling water from the air. Lydia's idea of comfort. They could keep it. I was done buying space in a house where love had become a transaction. Morning light woke me before Nora's alarm. The room was small, warm, full of quiet. I could hear her cat scratching at the back door, asking to be let out. I lay there a long time watching the shadows of leaves shift across the ceiling. It had been 3 days since I found my bags on the porch, and I was still waiting for the shock to fade. It hadn't. When I finally rose, I folded the blanket as I'd done my whole life, corners lined, seams flat. Small order against a world that had tilted. Nora was already in the kitchen reading the paper. She glanced up. "Coffee's fresh." "Thank you." I poured a cup, sat down, and tried to make my hands stop trembling. "I called the bank again," I said. "And they confirmed it. Every payment since Tom passed came from my account. Automatic transfers. I never stopped them." Nora frowned. "But the deed's not in your name anymore." "No," I said. "It's in Aaron's." I signed it away. I didn't mean to say it out loud. But there it was, flat and final on the table between us. Nora set the paper aside. "You trusted him." "I did. And he used that." I nodded. The words wouldn't come yet. The betrayal was too heavy to speak, like something caught in my throat. After Tom died, Aaron had come by every weekend. He fixed the porch steps, took care of the taxes, even cooked dinner sometimes. He said he didn't want me to worry. I mistook control for care. I mistook paperwork for love. Now, sitting there with the steam rising from my cup, I saw it all clearly, the slow way it had happened. The questions disguised as kindness. The suggestions wrapped in concern. "Mom, it'll just make things easier." "Mom, you don't need to handle that alone." "Mom, trust me." Step by step, he'd taken the weight from my hands until I didn't realize they were empty. "I need to know where I stand," I said. Nora reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. "Then you start finding out." That afternoon I went to the library. I couldn't bear to sit idle. I printed my bank records page by page, until the stack filled half a folder. Every withdrawal had the same note beside it. Mortgage, First Horizon. $1,544. 00 twice a month like clockwork. For 2 years. The librarian glanced at the growing pile and asked if I was researching something. I said yes, though the word research felt too tidy for what I was doing. It wasn't research. It was recovery. Outside, the air smelled of rain and asphalt. I walked to the bus stop, folder under my arm, and called the bank one more time. The young man on the line spoke quickly, cheerful, and rehearsed. "Yes, Mrs. Brooks, your payments are up to date. No delinquencies, no holds." "And whose name is on the loan?" "Primary borrower Aaron Brooks, co-borrower Lydia Brooks." "Thank you," I said. My voice sounded calm, almost detached. When I hung up, I whispered to myself, "Not anymore." The bus rumbled down the street, brakes hissing. I didn't get on. I just stood there, folder pressed to my chest, watching the wet leaves stick to the curb. That evening I called Aaron. I wanted to hear his voice, to see if he'd still sound like my son. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom. Everything okay? Did you know I've been paying the mortgage?" He hesitated. "Yeah, that's just how it's set up. We meant to switch it." "You meant to switch it for 2 years? Mom, don't get upset. It's just a technicality." "You took my house," I said. "And my money's still paying for it." His tone hardened. "You gave us that house. Remember? You said you wanted to make things easier." "I said yes because you were grieving and I was tired," I answered. "That's not the same as giving it away." He exhaled sharply. "Lydia and I have done everything for you, everything. You should be grateful." Grateful. The word cracked like glass. "I was," I said quietly. "Until now." Then I ended the call. Nora found me sitting on the porch steps, the phone in my lap, the folder open beside me. She didn't ask what happened. She just sat down next to me the way we used to sit outside the music building back in college, waiting for our turn at the piano. After a while she said, "You need help. Not emotional help, legal." I turned to her. "A lawyer?" "Yes. There's a man I know. Daniel Ruiz. He works with elder financial cases. He's quiet, thorough, and not easily fooled. I don't want to drag Aaron into court." "You don't have to drag anyone," she said. "You just have to stand where you belong." I looked out at the street. The first leaves were turning. I thought of the maple Tom planted, how its roots must still be under that house, steady even as everything above it changed. Call him, she said. Tomorrow. Daniel Ruiz looked younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with calm eyes and a voice that carried no judgment. His office smelled faintly of coffee and paper. I'm not trying to destroy my family, I told him. I just want the truth on record. He nodded. Let's start with the basics. You transferred ownership to your son? Yes. After my husband passed. He said it would help with taxes. And you've continued to make payments since? For 2 years. Automatically from my account. He flipped through the papers slow and methodical. Then he looked up. That's financial exploitation, Mrs. Brooks. You still have an equitable claim. The word claim felt foreign in my mouth. But behind it something flickered, dignity maybe, or just air after too long underwater. What happens now? I asked. You stop paying, he said. Immediately. Then we notify the bank and your son that you're asserting interest. They'll have to account for every dollar you've contributed. He handed me a card. Do not argue with them. Don't try to explain. Every conversation should go through me. I nodded. My throat was dry. Thank you. When I left his office, the sky had turned a clear September blue. I sat in the car, hands on the wheel, repeating his words until they sank in. You still have an equitable claim. That night I called the bank again, not to ask but to act. I canceled the automatic transfer. Confirmation flashed on the screen. Then I wrote in my notebook. Stop paying. Start reclaiming. 2 weeks later, Aaron showed up at Nora's door without calling. His face was red, eyes tight with anger. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Hello, Aaron, I said evenly. Come in. He didn't. He stood in the doorway, gripping his phone. You stopped the payments. The bank called us late fees warnings. This is insane. I folded my hands. Then you should start paying for your house. He blinked as if he hadn't heard me right. You're ruining our credit. I'm protecting what's mine. You're being manipulated, he said. Someone's filling your head with nonsense. I looked at him, the boy-eyed raised, the man who now stared at me like a stranger. No one's filling my head, Aaron. It's finally clear. His voice cracked. Mom, please don't do this. This, I said quietly, is already done. He turned away, muttering something about lawyers, about family loyalty, about betrayal. When the door closed, Nora came in from the kitchen. You all right? Yes, I said. For the first time, yes. I sat down at the table, opened my folder, and placed Lydia's note on top of the bank papers. The words looked smaller now, almost fragile. If you want to stay, the basement's available. Not anymore. The basement was never the point. The point was the boundary, the one I'd failed to draw for years and had finally set in ink. My money was off the table. And for the first time since Tom died, I felt the floor under me again. Solid. Mine. I did not hear from Aaron for almost a week after that scene at Nora's door. The silence should have felt heavy, but it did not. Felt like oxygen. Every morning I made coffee, fed her cat, and opened the paper without flinching. For the first time in years my heartbeat was my own. On the 8th day the silence cracked. Nora was sorting laundry when she called out. You should see this. She was holding her phone, the screen lit with a picture of Lydia. Lydia stood in front of my lilac bushes, head tilted, sunlight behind her. The caption read, Big changes coming. Finally upgrading to a new place. I felt something twist under my ribs. Upgrading. That was the word she chose for erasing me. The comments below were cheerful. Congratulations. You too deserve it. A few of them came from neighbors who used to wave to me when I trimmed those very bushes. None of them asked where I had gone. I scrolled through the rest of their page. New furniture. Paint swatches. A photo of Aaron holding a tape measure. The post before that said, Clearing space for the next chapter. They were planning to sell. I called Aaron. He answered after a long pause, his voice careful. Mom, I was going to tell you. You were going to sell the house, I said. It's just an idea. The market's strong right now, and it's my home. It's ours now, he said softly, like someone soothing a child. You signed it over, remember? We've talked about this. Please don't make things harder than they have to be. He used that word again. Harder. Hard is paying for something that no longer belongs to you, I said. Mom! I hung up. I did not shout. I did not cry. I just placed the phone down as if setting a dish back on a shelf. Half an hour later, Lydia called. Her tone was bright, the kind of brightness that burns. Evelyn, I know this is a lot to take in, but you should really think about assisted living. They're lovely places now, fitness rooms, art classes, no responsibilities. It would be safer for you. Safer from what? I asked. She hesitated. From stress. From confusion. I am not confused, I said. She took a breath. We're doing what's best for everyone. Best for you, maybe, I said. Not for me. Her voice sharpened. Aaron feels terrible about all this. He says you've changed. You're listening to people who don't understand the situation. People like my lawyer? Silence. Then a quick exhale. So that's how it's going to be. It already is, I said. When I ended the call, my hands were steady. I realized something then: silence can be power if you use it right. Every word I did not say went into a kind of ledger balanced against years of swallowing what I should have spoken. 2 days later, Nora came back from the grocery store with an odd look. I ran into Janet Miller at the checkout, she said. She asked if you were settling into the retirement place. What retirement place? She said Aaron told her you'd moved voluntarily, that the house was too much for you. People are talking. I sat down. They think I'm losing my mind. They want them to think that, Nora said. Makes the story cleaner. Cleaner. As if I were a stain they were wiping off the family name. The next morning I found a message on my voicemail. A woman's voice, polite but careful. Mrs. Brooks, this is Marcy from Rosewood Community. We received an inquiry from your son about a possible residency. Just calling to follow up. I listened twice. Then a third time. My own son had applied for a space for me in a retirement home. Without asking. I saved the message. Evidence. That afternoon I met Daniel Ruiz again. His desk was as neat as before, but he smiled when he saw the envelope in my hand. More papers, he asked. Proof, I said. He listened as I told him everything. The Facebook post, the retirement inquiry, the neighbor's whispers. When I finished, he folded his hands. They are establishing a narrative, he said, making you appear unstable before any legal proceedings. It's common in cases like this. So what do we do? He tapped his pen against the desk. We make it impossible for them to sell. I'll file a notice of equitable interest. It tells potential buyers that the title is contested. No one will touch that property until this is resolved. Will it be public? I asked. Yes. Good, I said. For the first time I felt something close to satisfaction. Not revenge, not even anger, just the clean balance of truth taking its own shape. Within a week everything shifted. The for sale listing went up on a Tuesday morning and came down by Thursday night. Real estate sites marked the property as pending review. On Friday, I went to the community center for my volunteer shift. Conversations paused when I entered. A few women came up quietly afterward. Evelyn, one of them said, is it true they tried to sell your house without you knowing? I didn't confirm or deny. I simply said, I'm handling it. By the next week I didn't need to say anything. The story had spread on its own. Someone had seen the notice Daniel filed. Someone else had overheard Lydia arguing on the phone at her office. Truth, once loose, travels faster than gossip. By the following month, Lydia was gone from the real estate firm. A conflict of interest, her boss said. Aaron stopped posting online altogether. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just took long walks along the river, the way Tom and I used to, and let the quiet do its work. One afternoon as I passed the house on Laurel Street, I saw the front curtains drawn tight. The yard looked unkempt, weeds rising through the gravel. The maple tree's lower branches had gone wild, reaching down toward the ground like they were looking for something they'd lost. I stood across the street and whispered to it, I'm all right. The wind lifted the leaves as if to answer. A week later, Aaron sent a short message. Mom, can we talk? I did not respond right away. I waited 3 days, then wrote back. All communication through Mr. Ruiz, please. He didn't write again. But Lydia did. Her email arrived late one night. You've humiliated us. Everyone in town is talking. Was that your goal? I read it once, then deleted it. Some words do not deserve to live on paper. That night I slept without dreams. At the next neighborhood association meeting I went with Nora. I hadn't planned to speak, but when I walked in the room went still. Someone whispered my name. Another woman, Betty, who lived 2 houses down from the old place, touched my arm. "We're glad you're here, Evelyn." There was kindness in her eyes but also discomfort. The kind that comes from realizing you've believed the wrong story. When the meeting ended, people lingered. A few came up quietly, asking questions, offering sympathy. I didn't explain details. I didn't need to. The truth was already doing its own work. By the time I got home, I had more messages on my phone, old friends from church, from the senior center, all saying the same thing. "We heard what they did to you. We're so sorry." I didn't answer right away. I sat by the window with a cup of tea and watched the rain. It was steady cleansing. In the quiet, I said it once more to myself, as if to confirm that the line still held. "My money is off the table." The words no longer sounded like defense. They sounded like ownership of my choices, of my piece of the story that was finally mine. After that scene at Nora's door, I did not hear from Aaron for almost a week. The silence, to my surprise, did not weigh me down. Gave me air. Every morning I woke up in Nora's guest room, brewed coffee, fed her cat, and for the first time in months, I felt the day belonged to me. On the 8th day the quiet broke. Nora was folding laundry when she called me over. "You should see this," she said, holding out her phone. On the screen was a picture of Lydia standing in front of my lilac bushes, smiling in the sun. The caption read, "Big changes coming. Finally upgrading to a new place." I felt something twist inside me. Upgrading. That was her word for erasing me. The comments below were full of congratulations. Little hearts and emojis from neighbors who once waved to me as I watered those same bushes. Not one of them asked where I had gone. Scrolling further, I saw more updates: new furniture, paint samples, Aaron measuring a wall, and a caption that said, "Clearing space for the next chapter." They were preparing to sell. I called Aaron. He answered on the second ring, cautious. "Mom, I was going to tell you. You were going to sell the house," I said. "It's just an idea. The market's good right now. It's my home. It's ours now," he said softly, as if talking to a child. "You signed it over. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be." That word again, harder. It always meant the same thing: stop resisting, stop existing. I hung up without another word. Half an hour later, Lydia called. Her voice was bright, professional, the voice of someone who never lost control. "Evelyn, I know this is emotional, but you should really think about assisted living. They're wonderful now: fitness rooms, activities, no stress. It would be safer for you." "Safer from what?" I asked. She paused, searching. "From worry," she said. "From being alone." "I'm not alone," I said. She took a breath, her tone sharpening. "We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." "Best for you, maybe," I said. "Not for me." There was a small, hard silence. Then she said, "Aaron feels awful about all this. He says you've changed. You're letting other people fill your head with ideas." "You mean my lawyer?" The silence deepened. Then a quick exhale. "So that's how it's going to be." "It already is," I said, and ended the call. After that, I sat for a long time by the window, watching the rain trail down the glass. The fear was gone. What remained was clarity, cool, precise, unshakable. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any argument. A few days later, Nora came back from the grocery store with that look people get when they've heard something they don't want to repeat. "I ran into Janet Miller," she said. "She asked how you're adjusting at the retirement place." I frowned. "What retirement place?" She said Aaron told her you'd moved there on your own, that the house was too much for you. So that was the story now. They weren't just removing me, they were rewriting me. To make it tidy, they had to make me unwell. Later that evening, I checked my voicemail. A woman's voice, polite and professional, said, "Mrs. Brooks, this is Marcy from Rosewood Community. We received an inquiry from your son about a possible residency. Just calling to follow up." I played it 3 times. Aaron had already made the call. I saved the message. Evidence. When I met with Daniel Ruiz again, he listened without interrupting, then said, "They're creating a narrative that you're incapable of managing your affairs. It's a common tactic in cases like this." What can we do? I asked. He leaned forward. We stop the sale. I'll file a notice of equitable interest. That means any buyer will see that the title is disputed. No one will touch it. Will it be public? Yes. Good, I said. Within a week, the for sale listing disappeared from every website. Lydia's office was buzzing with gossip. Someone had overheard her arguing over the phone. By the end of the month, she was gone from the real estate firm. Aaron stopped posting online altogether. I didn't celebrate. I didn't need to. The truth was moving on its own now, quiet but unstoppable. I took long walks along the river, the air cool and clean. Sometimes I passed the old house on Laurel Street. The windows were shut, the yard unkept, weeds pushing through the gravel. The maple Tom and I planted had grown wild, its lower branches stretching toward the ground like it was bowing. I stood across the street and whispered, "I'm all right." The leaves shifted in the wind as if answering back. A week later, Aaron sent a short message. "Mom, can we talk?" I waited 3 days before replying. All communication through Mr. Ruiz. He never wrote again. But Lydia did. Late one night her email arrived. "You've humiliated us. Everyone's talking. Is that what you wanted?" I read it once then deleted it. Some words do not deserve to live. At the next neighborhood meeting I went with Nora. When I walked in, the room fell silent. A few people nodded, some looked away. Betty from 2 houses down came over and said, "We're glad you're here, Evelyn." There was guilt in her eyes but also something like respect. By the end of the meeting no one asked questions. They didn't need to. The truth had already found its way around town. The way water finds every crack and stone. That night I sat by Nora's window, the rain steady outside, and whispered to myself, "My money is off the table." The words no longer sounded defensive. They sounded like ownership of my choices, my peace, and my name. For the first time in years I felt that my life was mine again. The morning after the neighborhood meeting, I woke to sunlight spreading through Nora's kitchen like honey. The air smelled of coffee and wet grass. For the first time in months I didn't feel afraid to open my eyes. The house was quiet except for the ticking of her old clock and the faint creak of the back porch where her cat liked to sleep. I moved slowly, careful not to disturb the calm. My life had shrunk down to simple movements. Boil the water, pour the cup, breathe, but for the first time those small things belonged entirely to me. Nora came in wearing her gardening gloves, holding a handful of seed packets. "You have color in your face again," she said, setting them on the table. "I slept," I said. "That's a start." She sat across from me. "Daniel called yesterday while you were out. He said the next step is formal notice. You'll have to sign a few papers." I nodded. I was no longer afraid of paperwork. Paper was how the truth learned to stand on its own legs. That afternoon we drove to Daniel's office. The sky had that thin, silvery look Oregon gets before rain. Inside the air was cool and still. Daniel motioned for us to sit. "I've drafted the claim," he said. "Once you sign, it becomes part of the record. From now on, any transaction involving that property requires your consent. And more importantly, the bank will have to review every payment you made." I took the pen from his hand. The document was long, filled with words I didn't fully understand, but one sentence caught my eye. The claimant asserts equitable interest due to continued financial contribution after transfer of title. It sounded dry, legal, impersonal, and yet it was the first thing in years that spoke for me. I signed my name slowly, carefully, the way Tom used to when he wanted every letter to mean something. When I was done, Daniel looked up. "They'll be notified by mail and email. Expect a reaction. Sometimes people like your son and daughter-in-law panic when the illusion of control breaks." "What kind of reaction?" I asked. "Pressure," he said. "Maybe apologies, maybe threats. Do not engage." I nodded. "I won't." On the drive back, Nora reached over and squeezed my hand. "You look steady in there," she said. "I am," I answered. "I think I'm finally on the side of myself." 2 days later, the storm arrived. Not the one in the sky, but the one Daniel had warned me about. It began with a phone call from Aaron. His voice was tight, the kind he used when trying to sound calm while boiling inside. "Mom, what did you do?" "I protected myself," I said. "Lydia and I just got some kind of legal notice. What is this? You're accusing us of what, stealing from you?" "I'm asserting my interest," I said. I paid for that house long after it stopped being mine. Mom, this is insane. You're letting that lawyer poison you. We were just trying to help. I know exactly what you were trying, I said quietly. He took a sharp breath. You're destroying your own family. My family destroyed itself, I said. There was a long silence on the line, broken only by his uneven breathing. Finally he said, You're going to regret this. No, I said. You will. And I hung up. That night, Nora poured me a glass of wine. He'll fight, she said. I know. But you've already won the part that matters. Which part is that? The part where you stopped apologizing. The following week, Daniel sent me copies of the responses. Lydia's letter was long, defensive, full of phrases like misunderstanding and temporary oversight. Aaron's was shorter, one paragraph, almost childlike in tone. He wrote, Mom, please can we settle this quietly? You're hurting everyone. I didn't answer. My words belonged in court filings now, not family messages. Meanwhile, the story continued to spread. People in town stopped believing the rumors about my memory loss. Some even came up to me at the market or the library, awkward and kind. We didn't know, they'd say. We're so sorry. I would smile and nod because I had no energy left for blame. In early November, Daniel called with an update. The bank has completed its review, he said. Their records confirm what we suspected. Your payments continued for 21 months after the title transfer. That gives us leverage for restitution. Restitution, I repeated. That means they have to pay me back? Either that, he said, or they surrender part of the property value. We'll see which they choose. For the next few weeks, everything moved in a blur of paperwork and meetings. Daniel was steady as stone, explaining each step with patient care. He said we might not get everything, but we would get enough to make things right. Enough for me to start again. Then, one gray Thursday morning, Lydia appeared at Nora's door. Her hair was perfect, her expression composed, but her eyes were tired. Evelyn, she said, we need to talk. Nora stood behind me, arms crossed. You can talk on the porch. Lydia hesitated, then began. This has gone too far. Aaron's job is at risk. We're under review for financial fraud. The bank's asking questions we can't answer. Can't we fix this privately? We'll pay you back what you've spent. You can't buy my silence, I said. This isn't about silence. It's about family. No, I said. Family doesn't lock you out of your own house. Her face hardened. You think you're innocent in this? You manipulated Aaron's guilt for years. You made him feel like he owed you everything. I didn't raise my voice. I never asked for everything. Just honesty. She shook her head. You'll ruin us. I'm not ruining you, I said softly. I'm just done funding you. Lydia blinked, as if the words themselves carried weight. For a moment she looked less angry and more lost. Then she turned and walked away without another word. When she left, Nora came forward and put a hand on my shoulder. You handled that perfectly. I only told the truth, I said. That's what perfect sounds like, she replied. Winter came early that year. The days turned short and wet, and the town seemed quieter than usual. The hearing was scheduled for December. I wore Tom's old gray coat, the one that still smelled faintly of cedar. Daniel sat beside me at the long oak table, calm and deliberate. Across from us, Aaron looked pale and exhausted. Lydia stared at the papers as if they might rewrite themselves. The mediator began. We are here to discuss restitution and ownership status concerning the property at 74 Laurel Street. Daniel presented the evidence. Bank statements, transaction logs, Lydia's email asking me to move into assisted living, and the voicemail from the retirement home. It was all there, neat, undeniable, factual. When Aaron spoke, his voice trembled. I didn't mean to hurt my mother. We just thought. He trailed off. We thought we were doing the right thing. The right thing, Daniel said calmly, does not require deception. Lydia tried to interrupt, but the mediator silenced her with a raised hand. The evidence is clear. Mrs. Brooks retains an equitable claim on the property and is entitled to reimbursement or settlement. Aaron's shoulders sagged. Lydia pressed her lips together so tightly they turned white. I did not look at them. I looked at the papers in front of me, at my own name printed clearly across the top. It had been missing for so long that seeing it there again felt almost holy. By the end of the session, an agreement was reached. They would compensate me for all payments made, plus a portion of the property value. I would release the claim once the transfer was complete. There was no triumph in it, only relief, the quiet kind that comes when a wound finally closes. Outside, the air smelled of rain and wood smoke. Daniel shook my hand. "You did well," he said. "I just told the truth," I replied. He smiled. "That's harder than most people think." That night, back at Nora's, I sat by the fire and watched the flames move like slow breathing. The paperwork was done, the story written in official ink. I was no longer the woman standing on her own porch, begging to be let inside. I was the woman who learned where the door really was and how to close it. I slept deeply that night without dreams. The next morning, when I woke to the sound of rain on the roof, I knew the turning point had already passed. What lay ahead was not revenge but peace, the slow, steady kind that doesn't need witnesses. My money was off the table. And finally, so was my fear. The settlement papers were signed in late January, under a gray Oregon sky that smelled of wet cedar and chimney smoke. When I walked out of the mediator's office with Daniel, a sharp wind lifted my hair, and for a moment I felt lighter, as if something that had been tied to my chest for years had finally fallen away. The agreement was simple enough: reimbursement for the money I had paid, a portion of the property's value, and full acknowledgement of my contribution. Legal words, quiet words, but they changed everything. I moved through the following weeks with a kind of deliberate stillness, as if I didn't want to disturb my own peace. Nora teased me for counting every receipt, for organizing my new rental agreement 3 times before signing, but I think she understood. For years I had been generous without boundaries, patient without protection. Now I read every line twice, and that small act felt sacred. The news about the house traveled quickly, though not from me. Eugene is a small town, people talk. At the grocery store, a woman from the neighborhood stopped me near the oranges. "Evelyn," she said, lowering her voice, "I heard you got your house back." I smiled a little. "Not exactly," I told her. "I got my life back." She didn't quite understand, but she nodded anyway. By the next week, more people knew. Someone must have seen the court notice, or heard Lydia's name in connection with the dispute. It wasn't long before the whispers reached the local real estate office where Lydia had once worked. Her former manager, a practical man who never liked scandal, called Daniel to confirm the details. Within days, the office dropped her name from their listings. Officially, it was called a professional separation. Unofficially, everyone knew why. I didn't celebrate it, but I won't deny that a part of me felt the quiet satisfaction of balance restored. Aaron's silence was heavier. He stopped calling altogether. I knew from Nora, who heard things from her choir friends, that Lydia had moved out temporarily, claiming she needed space. Their house, my old house, sat in legal limbo, no longer theirs to sell, no longer mine to enter. Sometimes I walked past it on my morning route. The shutters stayed closed even on bright days, and the lawn that Lydia once kept trimmed to perfection had gone uneven and spotted with moss. The maple Tom planted had grown wild, reaching its branches toward the porch as if trying to reclaim what it once shaded. One Saturday, I saw Aaron standing by the mailbox. His shoulders were rounded, his hands deep in his pockets. He didn't notice me until I was almost beside him. For a second, we just looked at each other, 2 people standing in front of what used to be home. "Hi, Mom," he said finally. His voice was rough. "Hello, Aaron. I didn't know you'd be walking by." "I live nearby now," I said. "The river path comes out at the corner." He nodded, looking down at the ground. "It's strange being here now." "Yes," I said. "It is." There was a long pause. Then he said, "I didn't mean for it to end this way." "I know. I just thought we were helping," Lydia said. He stopped, as if the name itself hurt to say. "She said it was what you wanted." "I said a lot of things after your father died," I answered. "None of them were invitations to take what was mine." He swallowed hard. "They're saying things about us in town. About Lydia. About me." "I imagine they are. I didn't think it would get this big." "It's not big," I said quietly. "It's just true." He rubbed his hands together, restless, lost. I can't fix it. No, I said. But you can learn from it. For a moment he looked like the boy he used to be. The one who built toy boats with Tom in the garage, who ran through the sprinkler with grass stuck to his knees. Then he said, "I'm sorry," and walked back toward the porch. I didn't follow. When I returned to Nora's, I told her what had happened. She listened and said, "You handled it right. No anger. No lecture. Just the truth." "I think that's all I have left," I said. "And it's enough." A few days later, Daniel called to say the settlement had cleared. The money had been transferred, my share secured. "You're free to do whatever you wish now," he said. Those words, "free to do whatever you wish," sat with me all evening. Freedom, I realize, doesn't always mean running away. Sometimes it just means you can breathe in your own kitchen again without permission. By spring, I found a small cottage near the river, white paint peeling in soft curls, with a narrow porch just wide enough for 2 chairs and a pot of lilacs. The rent was modest. The landlord left me alone. I spent the first week scrubbing the windows, planting bulbs, and setting up my piano in the corner. When I pressed the first key, the sound wavered and then settled into tune, like my own voice finding its way back. Now I wake early, open the windows, and let the air move through the house. Sometimes children pass by on their bikes, their laughter rising above the sound of the water. In the afternoons, I give piano lessons to 2 girls from the neighborhood. They call me Mrs. Brooks, though I've told them to use my first name. I like the formality. It reminds me that I'm standing upright again. Every so often I still see Aaron in town. We don't talk much, just a small nod in passing. Once he stopped me near the post office. "Mom," he said, "I signed the papers. The house is listed under someone else now. It's over." "I know," I said. "That's good. Are you happy?" "I'm peaceful," I answered. "That's better." He nodded as if he understood, though I doubt he fully did. Then he walked away, and I watched him go without bitterness, without that old ache that used to twist inside me whenever he turned his back. The past will always live somewhere, between the maple tree roots, in the grain of the old porch boards, but it no longer lives in me. When I think of that house now, I don't see the locks or the note or the packed suitcases. I see Tom sanding the railing in the evening light, Aaron at 10 years old handing him nails, Lydia laughing on a day when none of us knew what the future would cost. It's all part of the same story, but I'm no longer trapped inside it. Some nights I sit by my window with a cup of tea and listen to the river. The air smells of lilacs and rain. The cottage is small, but it's mine. My name is on every paper, every receipt, every key. And though the world still moves with all its noise and worry, I know one truth that cannot be erased. I kept my word. My money is off the table. My peace is not for sale. Spring unfolded quietly that year. The lilacs outside my cottage bloomed early, filling the air with that deep, clean scent that always reminded me of Tom's shirts drying on the line. The river ran full from the melting snow, its current strong but steady. I had begun to teach 3 students now, 2 girls and 1 teenage boy who played without patience but with heart. The sound of the piano traveled through the small rooms like light moving across water. For the first time in years my days felt whole. I kept to a rhythm that suited me. Mornings for teaching, afternoons for walks or errands, evenings for reading by the fire. Nora visited often, bringing me news from town, mostly small things. A church bake sale, a new grocery clerk, a neighbor's new dog. Occasionally she mentioned Aaron. I always listened but did not ask for details. The past, once exposed, had lost its power to surprise me. One warm afternoon in May, I was pruning the lilac bushes when I saw a car slow down near the gate. It was Aaron's. He sat there for a moment before stepping out, hands in his pockets, the same uncertain look he had worn since the hearing. He waited by the path as if asking permission to come closer. "Hi, Mom," he said. "Hello, Aaron. I was nearby," he began. "I thought I'd stop." "You can come in," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. He followed me to the porch, glancing around at the small garden, the clay pots lined along the railing, the piano visible through the window. "It's nice here," he said. "It suits me." He nodded, then looked down. "Lydia's gone," he said after a moment. "She left a few months ago. I don't think she's coming back." "I see." I've been trying to get things in order, he went on. I paid off the last of the fees. Sold the house. It's strange not to drive down Laurel Street anymore. It was always too large for you, I said. Too full of memories you didn't make. He gave a short laugh then stopped. I didn't come to argue. I came to say I'm sorry. The words sounded honest if uncertain, like someone stepping onto a bridge that might still break beneath him. I can't change what happened, he said. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was selfish. I let her talk me into things I didn't question. I wanted to believe it was helping you. I set down my pruning shears and looked at him fully. I know you did, I said. But good intentions don't erase harm. They only explain it. He nodded slowly, eyes lowered. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just didn't want it to end without saying something. There's nothing to end, I said. We're family. We'll always be family. But that doesn't mean everything stays the same. He blinked and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be, the one who waited for my approval after showing me a perfect report card. Do you hate me? He asked quietly. No, I said. I've had enough of hate. It keeps you tied to what's already gone. He exhaled shakily. Then what do you feel? Peace, I said. And distance. Both are earned. He looked at me, his eyes wet but steady. I'm glad you found peace, Mom. I am too, I said. He stayed a few minutes longer talking about work, about a new apartment, about trying to rebuild. When he finally stood to leave, he hesitated. If you ever need anything, I'll ask, I said gently. But I won't need much. He nodded and walked down the path. When his car turned the corner, I felt no emptiness, only calm. Closure doesn't arrive with noise. It comes quietly, like a tide returning to its rhythm. That evening I sat at the piano. The lilac scent drifted through the open window. I played one of Tom's old songs, the one he used to hum while sanding the porch railing. The same railing they replaced, then painted over and finally sold. The notes were simple, a small circle of sound, but they filled the room with something solid and clean. After a while I stopped playing and let my hands rest on the keys. Outside, the river glimmered through the trees, the water moving slow and certain. I thought of everything that had happened, the lies, the silence, the manipulation, the courtroom, the papers, the settlement, and how each of those moments in its own way had led me here. Not to victory but to balance. Not to wealth but to freedom. They had expected me to disappear quietly. To shrink, to doubt myself, to apologize until there was nothing left to claim. Instead, I had learned that love without boundaries becomes debt, and forgiveness without truth becomes permission. The clock in the corner struck 9. I stood, turned off the lamp, and looked once more out at the garden. The lilacs swayed gently in the night air, their fragrance soft and full. I thought of Tom, of the home we built, of the lessons we never meant to teach. They thought I would fade into silence. But I found my way back. Not to their house, not to their version of family, but to myself. My money is off the table. My peace is mine to keep. And at last that is enough. It was not easy to tell this story, but I am glad you were here to hear it. If it touched you, please leave a like and subscribe so I can share more. And in the comments tell me, what did this story remind you of in your own life?